Hello, welcome back to the Coleman channel, and welcome back to another installment of the Tube Review, where we review films and shows and things like that. Media, visual media, yeah, whatever. Yeah, today we're coming back at you with another review of a film, as you may expect. This is a film that I literally just watched yesterday. I've got a ticket in there. I'm not going to bring it through because, you know, whatever. But this is a film that I had no idea existed. And it's a film that I only discovered a couple of days ago and I watched yesterday. And as you probably saw from the title and the thumbnail, this is Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence is a 1983 war film that I had literally no idea existed. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence is a 1983 war film that like I said, I had no idea that it was a thing. I had no idea it existed. No clue. This is all news to me. But it was showing in the GFT, otherwise known as the Glasgow Film Theatre, which is, I've explained it before in my collection video where I talked about movie tickets and stuff. It's like a theatre that's in Glasgow. It's like an old theatre that shows films. And my mother suggested that we go see it because it's got David Bowie in it, which is a musician that we both love very much. And I've not seen a lot of David Bowie films other than The Man Who Fell to Earth, which is just a fucking weird flick. It's pretty good, but it's just very bizarre. And she showed me the picture of like the listings, and Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence was there, and she said David Bowie, and I went, where? Where's the Bowie? I thought she was talking about like the David Bowie bio pic, not even the biographical film thing, right? But it was Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. Went, yeah, why not? We'll give it a go. So I walked into this film with literally zero expectations at all. I was expecting to walk into another Man Who Fell to Earth kind of situation, kind of like this film. It's like maybe a big hit with like a lot of Bowie fans, but not a lot of people know about it or care about it or whatever. And I watched the film, and I'm going to give you my spoiler-free review right off the bat. And my spoiler-free review is simply this. If you have not seen this fucking film, turn off this review right now, right this second, and go and watch it, and then come back to me, because I do not want to tell you fucking anything about Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence until you watch it. I want your perception of it first before you watch this review. I don't know what your viewpoint on it will be compared to mine, but for the love of God, well, I'll say, do yourself a fucking favour and watch Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence first before you watch this review. That's my spoiler-free review. It's very rare when I want to actually give away nothing, like literally not even spoiler-free stuff. It's a very rare thing for me on the Tube Review, where I want to tell you zilch about a film. All right. So that's my spoiler-free review of Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. Go and watch it immediately before you watch this review, if you want to see my viewpoint on it, spoilerific review and all that kind of stuff. So we're gonna dive into the spoilerific review literally right now. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence is, honest to God, one of the most gorgeous fucking films I have ever seen in my life. It struck such a heavy chord with me in my heart sitting through and watching this. It is insane how this film touched me. I don't know why it is. It's such, oh man, it's beautiful. It is a beautiful film in terms of the plot, in terms of the cinematography, even in terms of the acting, and the soundtrack on this fucking film is, everything about it is a feast, man. It is to die for, this film. It is a travesty that is considered to be a, quote, minor classic, unquote. The fact that not a lot of people seem to know about this film, it's just kind of zipped under the radar and never found an audience when it came out, is fucking so crazy to me, insane to me. Because I like I said, I walked in zero expectations. I think that made it improve the experience even more, that I literally knew nothing about it, and it just it made such a strong impact on me in terms of the story and everything else that comes along with it. It is a gorgeous fucking movie. It is beautiful in every sense of the word, and I'm going to break it down as to why right now. So the plot, and in its way, is incredibly simple. It's literally just a bunch of British soldiers, POWs, being held by the Japanese in Japanese occupied Java. I don't know where Java is. It's an island in Indonesia. Yeah, they talk about that all the time. And yeah, it's literally just British POWs trying to live well under the internment of the Japanese soldiers during World War II. And really, the whole film literally just explores. It's based on a novel, first of all. I'll put everything in post about what the film is, what the book is called, and what the author's about. So, I guess in a weird way. So it's not necessarily like a biopic, because the book is about the author's experiences as a POW in a Japanese camp. But I'm assuming that the film probably takes a lot of liberties in order to tell its story. But this entire film is literally it's all about cultural barriers, which is the most fucking insane thing in wartime as well, between the British and the Japanese, particularly through the character of John Lawrence, who is the title character of the film, which is one of the very impressive aspect as well, is that even though John Lawrence is the title character, he never feels like the main character either. There are a lot of like really central characters for this film, like Jack Collier's or something, the guy played by David Bowie, Captain Yonoi, the leader of the Japanese soldiers in this war camp, who's, I can't remember the guy's name, but he actually passed away like this year or the year before. He was one of the band members of the band Yellow Magic Orchestra, which is like the Japanese version of Kraftwerk essentially. It's not he's that simple, but in layman's terms it's essentially what that is. And the guy from Takeshi's Castle is in this as well. All these characters that are like played beautifully, I must say, are all like really important central figures for this film, and it never feels like there is a central character for the whole thing. Obviously, like, John Lawrence guides the film through his middleman position of the British Army and the Japanese Army, who is like liaising and trying to surpass these cultural barriers and understand why this is happening to them. You know, being made to watch people commit harakiri and all this kind of stuff. This what would be purveyed as archaic behaviours to the British that are completely normal to the Japanese. So yeah, Lawrence serves that position, but he never feels like the main character, which is fucking quite incredible and really balanced writing somehow. But yeah, the cultural barrier thing was so poignant and so beautifully told, and it's one of the most impressive things about the whole thing, because the film is very much a project with different perspectives. Like, the director and the writer are from the East, Japanese, and the producer and the other two writers for this film are both from the West. So there are these perspectives that are seen in this film being presented to you from the two sides. So there's no bias or anything. It's not like a really ridiculous depiction from a half of the world that don't understand it at all. It's from these two sides collaborating to make this project to properly convey the differences in culture, the barriers that are put in place, and how they confront each other, and specifically this war and wartime, because especially for the Japanese, had a very, very stubborn viewpoint during the war. Do you know what I mean? Like, literally, they would not stand down. Like, but after the Germans fell, the Japanese still stood, because they would rather die than surrender, because it was a matter of honour at that point, which is such a massive thing in this film. They don't understand how the British could just surrender. They think it would be a better idea to just kill yourself, because there's at least honour in that. There's shame in giving up. And it's these beautiful conversations that are so natural and do not feel written whatsoever. There's so many scenes where it just feels like you're listening into a conversation between these two, particularly the character of Lawrence and Lieutenant Hara, I think it is, the guy who is played by Takeshi, who are basically in these positions constantly conversing with each other, you know, basically an enemy and an enemy, about their cultural differences and how they basically just don't understand one another, but explain to each other what it all means from their perspectives, which is fucking glorious, man. Like, the writing and the dialogue in this is just unbelievable, man. It's unfucking precedented. Not to mention, like, a lot of the cinematography in this film is fucking glorious as well. There's a lot of like very Wes Anderson-esque scenes where everything's like very centered and organized, like the scene where David Bowie is going through his court hearing if he's going to get court-martialed or whatever, where he's in the center at the foreground behind in the front of this table, and then it's the whole court. It's just very perfectly balanced. The scene where someone's about to commit harakiri, you got the British on one side and the Japanese on the other, and then the guys in the middle. It's just always very centered. There's a lot of really great kind of aerial shots where it's just like a full screen of like the floor, the ground, and then the characters in the middle doing whatever. Some fucking fantastic tracking shots as well, but all these kind of aerial shots and tracking shots and slow movements really make you feel like you're in the film, like you're listening into these conversations. It doesn't feel like you're watching the film, it's like you're inside the experience, experiencing this dialogue and experiencing these characters. And it's a fucking masterclass, man. It's phenomenal. One of my favourite scenes in terms of like the cinematography is when David Bowie breaks free, because he eventually gets taken to this camp after his hearing, and he gets basically put in like confinement because he's a rebellious young fella. He breaks free, and there's a scene where he's like running to break Lawrence out as well, because he gets put in his own separate solitary at one point in the film. I think because they find a radio disguised as a water bottle, a canteen, and it's a slow tracking shot where Bowie's so far away down this winding path of like trees and foliage and shit everywhere, and it just looks so beautiful. There's so many shots in this film that genuinely look like a painting. There's so much going on the screen. It's so meticulous, like the sick bay where all the prisoners are, that scene in particular that I just told you about. There's a lot of flashback sequences of Bowie when he's back home in jolly old England. His house is like just so full of like beautiful foliage and flowers in this white house. It's so picturesque and it's condensed, and there's so much on the screen. Nothing gets wasted. There's something everywhere for you to look at, and it looks like you're looking at a moving painting sometimes. I'm dead serious. It looks phenomenal. So many of these shots are just fucking incredible, unbelievable, and beautiful. So yeah, like I keep saying and jumping back and forth, I just have so much to gush about for this film. The cultural barrier thing is the strongest theme of the whole film. They both have different understandings of what it means to be a prisoner of war, what it means to surrender, what it means to win, what it means to lose, what it means to dictate who's wrong and who's right, and all this kind of shit. People getting executed for doing something shameful and not admitting to their crimes, or like when the radio gets smuggled in, someone has to die. Like Lawrence was going to get executed just because someone had to be, and he can't get it through to the Japanese. They're like, you would rather just kill someone, you don't even know, and you know probably that it's not him, rather than find it or just leave it and make it a faultless crime and let the punishment go because you've stopped it from happening. And it's like, yes, it's fucking amazing, this dialogue about this cultural barrier shift, especially for the Japanese is the most interesting part, because it's definitely on their side, and you get to see these ancient, this dying age of the 1940s of like Japanese Bushido and practicing with katanas and the way of the samurai, and this basically dying age that the Japanese had of such ancient traditions are slowly kind of passing by. The British just can't comprehend at all. Believing in like evil spirits and achieving enlightenment, the British get made to fast as punishment to get out lazy spirits, but the Japanese would do it as well alongside them, even though the British just refuse, and eventually smuggle in food through David Bowie and all this kind of stuff. It's so cool. But I think the most beautiful part of like this whole dialogue, I know for a fact I'm not doing it a justice trying to describe it to you, because it's so simplistic, but it's so complex because of the layers that it delves into about these two nations, these two races, these two different cultures of people that are stuck together on this island. Is the conclusion of the film, where it does a complete 180. The war's been won, and Takeshi himself, Lieutenant Hara, is now a POW in Britain, and they're talking about an experience that Hara and Lawrence had together during Christmas, because Hara let them go free when they were like that scene I told you about before, where Bowie and Lawrence are being held in solitary as punishment, and they're probably going to be killed by firing squad at some point. And also they're both sharing their stories about women lost and all this kind of stuff, and these beautiful monologues that these two share in this scene as well. Hara lets him go free because he's had a couple of drinks and it's Christmas. And that's where the whole line comes from, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. And the ending, it just goes to show, like, despite all these cultural differences and this inability to understand each other in some cases, it's Christmas that brings them together. This just universal holiday that they have a common understanding just through that. It's such a simple thing, and it's such a beautiful thing, and it's such a beautiful ending as well, and it's such a sad ending as well, because Hara let Lawrence go free, and Lawrence can't do anything to let Hara go free, even though he would. God, it's just, it's such a fucking beautiful moment between these two characters, these two, I guess representatives of these two cultures. But I think the conclusion is, even at the end, they both know, despite these massive gaps in cultural difference, both sides can end up being wrong in the same way. They're both guided by systems of their culture that, despite the massive differences, retain so much similarity, and no one's right at the end. Lawrence almost got put to death for no good reason, and now Hara's getting put to death for no good reason either. And damn, fuck, man. Yonoi and Colliers are fascinating characters in this film. The only reason that Colliers ends up going to the camp and not getting put to death is because Yonoi is fascinated with him and is romantically interested in him too. Have you ever seen Berserk? You know Griffith and Guts? The relationship that these two characters have is almost one-to-one with this. Obviously they're not the same way. Like, Berserk has themes of like stopping at nothing to pursue a dream and a goal, but then Berserk and but then Guts and Griffith have this mad symbiotic relationship where they can't see this dream being fulfilled without either one of them being there, until Guts leaves and then Griffith realises it all falls apart and he lets his dream slip away because of one man. But it's almost the same just in terms of the way, because they see each other as kindred spirits, which is the exact same with Colliers and Yonoi. At the very least, Yonoi sees this in Bowie, how they're both like stalwart beings, and even when he doesn't know it, like, they've both experienced a lot of the same trauma in different ways. They both experience like their own, they're all haunted by their past. Both of them are haunted by pasts of their own perceived betrayals that's nested in their cultures as well. Yonoi believes there was an instant in, I think, February the 6th incident, I think it's called the February the 6th incident, where I think it was like the sacking of a city in Japan. Like, I think it was the Japanese uprising or something. I'm not too educated on the situation, but Yonoi essentially wasn't there, and he felt like he betrayed his people and has lived in great shame, which is why he's trying to better himself through Bushido and become like a spiritual god, essentially. And Bowie, Colliers, has experienced the exact same betrayal with his little brother, who was an amazing singer, and when he started school he got relentlessly bullied for it, and Bowie did nothing to step in and stop it from happening, in case his reputation as the head boy and stuff got damaged. And this was a betrayal that he has to live with, a very culturally different one, losing family and the shame of not standing up for family, and it's but they both lead to the same thing. They're both haunted by these pasts that are ultimately the same kind of thing. As a result, Yonoi is fighting in this war to become a spiritual god, really. And Bowie's joined the war. I keep calling him Bowie, Colliers, just because he's David, you see him as David Bowie. He's joined the war because he's just quite willing to throw himself. He's like the Guts of the situation. I keep comparing it because the character similarities are so strangely similar. But Guts basically tries to fight everybody because he has no reason to. He has no purpose and no reason to exist apart from find someone to kill him, but no one can. And Colliers essentially has lived with this strong guilt of losing and basically destroying such a talented individual that he's basically thrown himself into this war. He's lived such a successful life, but it's been nothing. So he joins this war because he's just willing to throw himself into it, if he dies or not, or whatever. That's why he's so rebellious and doesn't give a fuck, because if he dies, he dies. And this kindred spirit character interaction between these two is just so it's such a dynamic, man. It's so powerful, and that's what I mean by this. And there's no central character. These two are like the prongs of this whole thing. Yeah, Lawrence and Hara are there too. It's just so incredibly balanced. It's incredible how they've done this, man. Incredible. And of course, Colliers realizes that Yonoi is romantically interested in him, and he's basically like going against him, his own principles to try and get him get closer to him, essentially, until the point comes where Yonoi lines up I think it's like 600 men in the army, the prisoners, trying to find someone who's an expert in weapons, because the spokesperson for the British Army won't give him it. And he's interesting too, because he's like a classic British gentleman, the way he speaks, the way he looks, with the dapper moustache, always wearing his like lieutenant cap and stuff like that. I wonder if that's supposed to be like a symbol of like a dying breed of like British culture, like this dapper, gentlemanly, you sell apples and pears and do what and all this kind of stuff. I don't know if it is, but it seems it's a very interesting thing, because he's the only one that really is that, and he's the most stubborn and difficult one of all of them and of the prisoners. It's very interesting. But yeah, Bowie effectively sacrifices himself by coming up to Yonoi and kissing him on the cheeks, and basically just stunning him and shutting him down. This thing that Yonoi knows he shouldn't do has happened to him, has been thrown upon him, and Bowie gets like killed in the worst way possible. Like, it's horrific how he dies, but he does it for his men and for the people. Yeah, it's so many powerful moments in this film that I can't even like absolutely describe, which is why, if you're still watching this after I said watch it, I mean, just watch it for the love of God. Can I talk to you about the soundtrack for this fucking film for a little minute, please? Like I said, Captain Yonoi, the actor, the guy from Yellow Magic Orchestra, is the composer of this soundtrack as well. How many films can you name, or like shows or anything of this ilk, where the soundtrack is like tailor-made to the nth degree for the piece of media that it's made for? And I'm not talking about soundtracks as in like just music that's really good, that's been like hand-picked for this film, like, I don't know, like Full Metal Jacket or Guardians of the Galaxy or anything of these, where they're just like classic songs. I'm talking about like music that has been tailor-fitted for the film, that is like perfect. It matches the film so amazingly well, like tonally and everything, and aesthetically and visually. Vangelis for Blade Runner is one I can think of. I'm going to go back to Berserk again. The composer for that soundtrack, I'll put his name in post here. The soundtrack for Berserk, the original series in the 90s, is perfect too. This soundtrack does so fucking much for this film. It is such a beautiful, breathtaking soundtrack that perfectly matches the aesthetic, the film, the aesthetic, the story, the pacing, just every piece of music. All of this soundtrack is made for this film, and every scene that is in it just is so perfectly matched up with everything that happens. Like the opening sequence with the main title, which is one of the greatest, I think, opening titles for opening song titles I have ever heard. This is literally one of the best soundtracks ever made for a film. Immediately, because I didn't know what I was walking into, as soon as it starts up, it's just some dudes in a cabin, and one of them gets hit by a Japanese soldier. It's like, what's going on? How's this starting up? And then the soundtrack hits, and it's like, I don't know what the fuck I'm watching, but I'm in for something special. Sincerely, one of the greatest soundtracks ever made for a film. It is stunning. The entire film is fucking stunning, and again, complete travesty that it's only considered to be a quote minor classic unquote. I don't know what anyone else thinks of this film. Please let me know in the comments. Start a dialogue in terms of what we all think of this, because I thought Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence was a phenomenal, beautiful Mona Lisa of a film. And that's really all I can say about it. I don't know if I even put it into words. I don't know if I've done it justice. I hope I have. I hope I've at least enticed you to watch it, and I hope that you get the same feeling in your heart that I got just from this beautiful story and these beautiful characters and this beautiful soundtrack. Unbelievable. We're gonna put it in the epic to lame ratio now, and yeah, I'm just gonna throw it out here. It's a low tier certified hood classic. I'm not even putting it in most epic. It's genuinely one of the greatest films I've ever seen, and it's a sleeper one that I had no expectations of whatsoever when I walked into it, and I was fucking blown away. I didn't cry at the end of the film, but such a weight fell upon me of like this, like I've watched this moment happening in time, and it was incredible. It was just incredible. It's a fucking incredible movie. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence is a low tier certified hood classic. Please, 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 please watch it. Please watch it. And if you've come back after watching the film, I really hope that you got something out of it too. You know, just because I'm saying this, this is not an objective thing. I just feel like this is just a picture, a beautiful masterclass in filmmaking that really just struck a chord in me sincerely. And more than anything, I just hope that you got the same thing. I really hope that you got that same sensation wash over you as it did with me, because it was a beautiful thing that I just don't get very often. Like the last one that happened to me was watching Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I actually kind of ranked that film lower. I don't know why. I think just because the story, maybe Mr. Lawrence is much more of a simple. It doesn't need all this insane, and it's not got loads of comedy. It's a humorous film. There's a lot of great humor moments and banter, which is fantastic. How it blends that in with this story. But I think it's just because it's so simply executed with such beautiful cinematography, set design, characters, music, all of the things that make a film glorious are in this. And I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you for watching this installment of the Tube Review. Please watch Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. It's a fucking beautiful film. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.